Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Please Listen podcast. I'm your host, John Follett. And in this episode, we're going back. We're going back in time. We're going to do something that I like to call the Please Listen retrospective, where I talk about something that isn't recent, like it didn't come out last weekend or yesterday, but it's old, but it's old to the point where it's cool to talk about it again. You know, if you talk about something like 2 or 3 months late, you're kind of out of the loop. But if you talk about something like super old, like a old movie like Citizen Kane or Jurassic Park, that's cool because it's like it's like a retrospective. You're looking back at a time where like things were different. And for this retrospective, we're going so far back, 1 year back, actually less than a year back, because I'm doing this a little early, and I'm gonna do a retrospective about a show that I watched that started premiering almost a year ago, and that is a show that I've mentioned on this program before, season 2 of a pre-existing show, one that I was a big fan of in season 1, and that I never had the chance to talk about, and that is DC Studios' James Gunn's Peacemaker, season 2 of Peacemaker on HBO Max, starring John Cena and other actors. This is the technically third thing in this blossoming DCU. Most recently, we had the Supergirl movie, which I did an episode about. You can check that one out. I'll put a card up there. I'm putting cards now because I want people to watch my stuff. So I've talked about the DCU in the past. I talked about Superman, and I mentioned in that episode, the Supergirl episode, the one with the card. Don't forget that card. I mentioned how Peacemaker Season 2 is one of those things that I wish I had talked about when it came out. Instead, I had to wait a year for it to be cool to talk about again, and for me to be like, in style for me to talk about, because this is a retrospective, a Please Listen retrospective, trademark. I never had the chance to talk about it. I don't remember why, but I watched it as it came out, and I had many opinions on it. And I was deeply involved. I was highly anticipating this season because I was a huge fan of season 1. And this season, I have a lot of opinions about and a lot of feelings of. And for this episode, I rewatched the entire second season. I was thinking about doing the first season, but I've seen that one at least 3 times. And so the events are still fresh in my memory. I watched all 8 episodes within like a few days. And I also watched the official companion podcast, the official Peacemaker podcast, or whatever it's called, hosted by James Gunn, the creator of this show and the head of the DCU. And I watched the episodes where they cover all 8 episodes of this season, because that's what shows do. They have companion podcasts. I wanted to watch that just so I could get like a full picture of the intentions of the creatives and the people involved. And so I had I could base my criticisms on this. Like, I made sure to give the season a fair shot. Before we get into the show itself, I wanted to give a bit of a history lesson, because the inception of the DCU, as well as the continuity, has kind of brewed some controversy in the past few years since its creation. Because back in 2013, while the Marvel Cinematic Universe was in full swing, they'd been making movies. There was already one Avengers movie out that did amazingly. And DC, the other most popular comic book company, decided that they wanted a cinematic universe of their own. They tried multiple times. In 2011, they had the Green Lantern movie, which was starring Ryan Reynolds, which did not do good. That was going to be like the beginning of like a cinematic universe. They had I never seen it, but they had like Amanda Waller, and they had post-credit scene with Sinestro, who's like the Green Lantern's main villain. That didn't work out. So 2 years later, they tried again to start a new DC cinematic universe with the movie Man of Steel, directed by Zack Snyder. And Zack Snyder is an important name for this history lesson, because he basically he was like the shepherd of, I don't know if that's the right word, but he was like the main creative force behind this movie and a lot of what was going to be like the pillars of this DC. It's called the DCEU, this first iteration, the DCEU, the DC Extended Universe. Because it was going to be, he had his Man of Steel movie, And then 3 years later, they had Batman versus Superman, which, I mean, they're trying to catch up to Marvel, but it took them 3 years to make a second movie, which, I mean, there was nothing in between there. Like, that was the first movie. Those were the only two movies already kind of late at that point. And then they were going to have, I think a year later, or a year or 2 years later, they had a Justice League movie, which there is a whole story about the production of that movie I'm not going to get into. There was kind of a trend that people noticed with these movies, starting from the very beginning, and that is that a lot of these movies were really bad. They really just were horribly produced. It looks like there was a lot of like studio meddling with, especially like Suicide Squad. That movie was like reshot, or not reshot, but re-edited to death, and like the final version is like a mixture of two different versions that they screen tested to try and get the best results, and it's like it's a mess of a movie. Suicide Squad is important. That one came out 2016, same year as Batman vs. Superman. During this time, a movie would come out, and then it would do horribly, and DC was like, what the fuck do we do? We're losing. Everybody hates us now. We have to do something better. And they would do another movie which like going in like a completely different direction, and that one sucked too. So then DC Studios, the headquarters caught on fire again as everybody was running around trying to figure out what they do. And this is where the next player, the biggest player of this episode, comes in. This gentleman by the name of James Gunn. And James Gunn is most well known for directing and creating the 3 Guardians of the Galaxy movies for the MCU. Some of the most beloved movies in the MCU. Probably the best trilogy, if you think about it. Like those three movies are like stellar in my opinion. And they work best. I mean, at least the first 2, they work best as like a standalone trilogy. The third one, you kind of have to see it like Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame, because a big thing happens. But other than that, you can kind of watch those 3 like by themselves as like a normal trilogy, which you can't say about a lot of other MCU trilogies. And James Gunn, so he worked for Marvel in 2018, I think. He was fired by Marvel Studios for this controversy, these old tweets that he made. He was later rehired, and he was able to make his 3rd Guardians movie. But during this time, he was fired from Marvel. DC was like, he knows how to make good superhero movies. Let's snatch him up. We don't care. He could have said anything in those tweets, and we still would have snatched him up because we're desperate, right? So DC, they scooped him up, and they had James Gunn. Initially they were like, James Gunn, we want you to make a Superman movie. Please help us. We need a good Superman movie, and you're the guy for it. And James Gunn was like, I don't know if I feel comfortable making a Superman movie because he's like a big character. I'm more used to like teams of like anti-heroes or like a ragtag group of like rebel, like more unorthodox kind of heroes. And so he decided to make something that he thought he would be good at making, which is a soft reboot. Technically, I don't know if it's a sequel. I mean, it's basically a soft reboot of 2016 Suicide Squad called The Suicide Squad in 2021. I think that only released on streaming because it was like during the pandemic. And he made that movie. And then a year, 2 years later, the Suicide Squad movie didn't do that good because it was released during the pandemic on streaming. But soon after that, he made a spin-off of that movie, an HBO Max original series called Peacemaker, starring John Cena's character from the Suicide Squad, Peacemaker. And that show is what really like got popular. And then there was this humongous like kerfuffle with the DCEU and all these people trying to like take control of the universe and be like, we're going to do this. There's a thing with Dwayne Johnson. He was like, I'm going to be this character called Black Adam, and I'm going to have my Black Adam movie. I'm going to be like the main character of DC.
The hierarchy of power in the DC universe is about to change.
And I'm going to fight Superman. And his movie came out. Also did not do good. Also was not well received. And then that all fell apart. Henry Cavill, who played Superman in Man of Steel and the other movies, he was like, I'm returning as Superman and I'm here to stay. Lo and behold, it turns out that DC, Warner Brothers, had plans to reboot their entire universe, get rid of Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, all of that, and restart from scratch with James Gunn as the head of this DC Studios. A week or like a day after Henry Cavill was like, I'm coming back as Superman, James Gunn was like, we're rebooting Superman and there's going to be a new actor playing Superman. And then like around 2023, James Gunn made this movie like, here's the slate of our new DCU. And he had to be like, he was held like by gunpoint to be like, we have the Flash movie coming up, which is a really great movie. It's going to help explain the reboot. Because they had already made the Flash movie and they just had to release it, and then James Gunn was in charge, so he has to promote the movie. He's the head. He can't tell people to not see the movie. He's the head of DC. And then the DC, the Flash, horrible movie, probably the worst movie I've ever seen. And then there was Shazam 2, which nobody saw. Aquaman 2, I think, was the last movie in this old DCEU, and the universe just fizzled out, and everybody got primed and ready for this new universe, starting fresh with 2025's Superman movie, and all was good and said and done. However, since James Gunn was in charge of this universe, and he made 2 projects in this universe, ones that he was very passionate about and he really loved writing the characters for, this reboot wasn't as simple as James Gunn going, everything that came before does not count. And now we're starting anew. This is basically just a new continuity. Instead, what James Gunn did was that he got rid of everything else in the DCEU, but he decided to carry over the 2 things that he produced, the Suicide Squad movie and the Peacemaker show, season 1 of the Peacemaker show. And those 2 projects existed in this old DC universe, but James Gunn was like, he was making it so they existed in both universes, like a different way of events happening. So like, listen, for a long time, when Superman was coming out, I was super pro like James Gunn being like, this is perfect. This makes perfect sense. You can easily understand it easily. And as someone who reads comic books, understands this stupid superhero shit, it makes sense to me. However, to any normal person or any like casual moviegoer or someone who isn't insanely into this stuff, it's way too fucking complicated. I think I've realized that now in like the past like year or so. It's just thinking about it more. It's like it doesn't work. And James Gunn can explain it. It's like, he's like, Suicide Squad is like an imperfect memory. So like some things happen, but if you hear it mentioned and the stuff now, then you're like, okay, it is canon. But if it's not mentioned, you're meant to assume that it didn't happen. And I think this really only makes sense if you've seen the movie and the show like when they came out and you have like a vague recollection of it. So when somebody says like, oh, we did this thing in Corto Maltese and we fought a starfish, then you'll be like, oh yeah, I do remember that from the movie. Otherwise, it's way too difficult. Like, imagine like when you like introducing someone to this DCU, you have to be like, make them watch the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker season 1, and you're like, okay, now forget everything about those and only remember something if it's mentioned from now on. It's too complicated. It's too complicated. And so the first thing in this new DCU wasn't Superman movie. It was a show that an animated show that James Gunn was writing and producing back when he wasn't the head of the company, and he was just going to release in this old DCEU. But that just so happened to become the first thing because the thing got rebooted, and he was like, I guess I'll rework this to be in the new DCU. So technically the first thing in the new universe was this animated show about they're like supernatural, like the Creature Commandos is what it's called. They're just like supernatural, like monster type characters who are on a team similar to the Suicide Squad, but with monsters. And that has a lot of connections to the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, especially with Amanda Waller and Task Force X and all that. So it's pretty well connected. I guess it makes sense. And so we had that, and then we had the Superman movie, and then we had Peacemaker season 2, which is season 2 to a show that exists in a different universe as season 1. You might have to go back and like George Lucas these movies like he did with Star Wars. You might have to go and like I think maybe someone had left a comment about this and he responded. Because James Gunn, he is always on social media. He's responding to all sorts of fan theories and comments. And he maybe too much, a little bit too much, if you ask me. When he was like hyping the universe up, he was like, everything's gonna stand on its own. You're not gonna need to know what watch one thing to understand another thing, and all the teases, they're not gonna be in post-credit scenes. They're gonna be like in the show itself. He was like saying everything that like people who got fed up with Marvel and the way that they told stories and the way that they did interconnectivity. He was saying things that would like appeal to them. He was like, we're not going to make these mistakes. However, before this season came out, season 2 of Peacemaker, he fast-tracked the release of Superman like onto streaming. So he was like, I think people should see Superman before they watch Peacemaker season 2. So already like not living up to the whole everything stands on its own, because I mean a lot of times in this season they mention the events of Superman. Part of the reason why a character is doing something is because of what happens in Superman. And there's a character in this season played by Frank Grillo. His name is Rick Flag Sr., the dad of a character who was in the Suicide Squad movie. When Peacemaker season 2 came out, he was in all 3 projects in this new DCU. He was in Creature Commandos. He was basically the main character. He had a smaller role in Superman, and in this, he's basically like the antagonist, like the main antagonist of this season. So he was in all 3 things. By the way, I have some beef with Frank Grillo, because he played a character in the MCU, Brock Rumlow, aka Crossbones, and he was in 2 Captain America movies, and he had a cameo in Endgame, and he tells a story. He's always talking shit about the MCU. He's always like, man, they killed me off so fast. I was barely in any of the movies. I was gonna say no to doing a cameo in Avengers Endgame until my son was like, you have to be in this movie. I'm like, damn, sorry. Like, he was like, I don't know. He felt like so entitled to like have more screen time in the MCU, even though he had like a sizable. He did some pretty he was responsible for Wanda accidentally causing the explosion in Lagos. But yeah, he just wanted to be in. I guess he's happy in the DCU now because he was in all the first 3 things, a pretty sizable role. Yeah, that's my beef with Frank Grillo. He seems like a nice guy though. When he was on the podcast, he seems like a fun guy. And so when this season came out, I was super excited because I liked Creature Commandos. I loved Superman, and I also loved the first season of the show when it came out. So I was like super excited for this. And then it came out, and as the season progressed, I became more and more disappointed, and it kind of soured my expectations for this DCU. But I decided for the 1-year anniversary of this show, I would rewatch it and give it a second shot. And before I get into this, I'm going to say spoilers for Peacemaker Season 2 and Season 1 and probably everything else in the DCU. Maybe I don't think I'll talk about Supergirl that much. But spoilers, so if you haven't seen it, either watch this and be spoiled or go watch it and I don't care. But if there's one word I could use to describe this season, I was going to say pointless, but there's a lot of things in the show that, in this season, that are like pointless. Like they kind of just lead to nothing. And as I was watching this season, I was getting I was noticing like so many like details that are kind of, I don't know, because James Gunn wrote the first 3 things in DCU were like within like a few months of each other, I think, like in the same year and the same like half of a year. Like he wrote those things, all 3 of those things, Creature Commandos, Superman, and Peacemaker. Those were the first things to come out in the DCU, all written by him. Superman was directed by him. I think the last episode of Peacemaker was also directed by him. So like he was just him, like being like the main creative force behind these 3 things that came out within very closely of one another within the same year. And so like I make sense if he was like kind of like overwhelmed or kind of burnt out, because I was just like noticing like a lot of lines or like actions that characters take not really meshing well with what we know about the character and like what the character would do. That kind of like, if you really like think about it, like is kind of lore breaking or like kind of world breaking. But like I don't know, he James Gunn seems very like loose when it comes to characterization, like consistencies with how people act. And we start with the first episode of season 2, which I still think is a great episode. I always, when episode 1 came out, I was still hyped for the show. Even after watching, I was like, this is great. It has a recap, like recapping the events of the last season, and the recap does something pretty cool. It has a scene from the last season, the finale of the last season, and it swaps out characters, because there's a scene at the end of the season where characters from the old DCEU like make a cameo, and in the recap they swap it out for characters from the new DCU, ones from that we saw in Superman, and so it kind of, I thought that was a cool way of like, it helps explain the reboot a little bit, where it's like events like this happened, but instead of this character showing up, it was this character, because this character exists in this universe and this one doesn't. But I thought that was really cool. I loved it when I saw it. And I'll stand by this. I thought this when the show came out as well. I love the intro song, the new intro song, the little dance they do. I think it's better than season 1's. I know season 1, it was kind of unexpected the way that the show has like the intro for the show, like the opening credits, there's like a choreographed dance with the whole cast. It was like very funny and like unexpected and kind of quirky. And people were like, oh, this element of surprise is gone, because everyone was expecting there to be a dance, because last season had one. And this season has a dance as well, to a different song. I was listening to that song on repeat when the show was premiering, because I loved it so much. And this episode had like everything that I was like expecting the show to be. Like, it had one Peacemaker in his costume, which is kind of a personal thing for me, but he spends very little time in his outfit. His main outfit, because he switches to the alternate one. I'll get into it later. But I think this is the only time he wears like his actual costume, because I remember last season he was wearing that thing like all the time, even like in diners and places that he shouldn't even, but he had it on like all the time. For this, he had his costume on. There were connections to the larger DCU. He does like an interview for the Justice Gang from Superman, and we see Hawkgirl and Green Lantern and Sean Gunn show up, James Gunn's brother. That's a thing that people criticize James Gunn for, how he always casts his friends or his family in things. And I will say Sean Gunn, because his wife plays like the second lead in this, like Peacemaker's like love interest, Amelia Harcourt. His brother has played, I think, 3 characters in the new DCU and 1 other character in the old DCEU. So that's 4 characters. That's a lot. Make me one of those roles. I can be fucking Weasel. But yeah, he does an interview with the Justice Gang, and they're all mean to him. They say something about like not killing people, and like that's a bad thing if you're in the Justice Gang. And I'm like, then in the Superman movie, Hawkgirl killed a guy. She dropped the dictator guy and killed him. But I guess maybe they changed to where like they're fine with people killing. They're not fine with people killing people anymore. So that scene happens. I like a lot of the friendly dialogue, because in the first season, a lot of them, they don't like each other, and then the main cast, like, they learn to like, really become like actual friends. And so like they have like a lot of dialogue that like you would hear like friends say, like friends like joking around, like doing bits. I think a lot of it's like endearing, and a lot of it is like kind of real. Some of the jokes that people make, some of the written jokes are not very funny. There's a character, Vigilante, named Vigilante. I will say that Vigilante's like the actor's performance, I forget his name. He's in Harry Potter. I remember seeing him in Harry Potter, but him acting is like this oblivious, like wide-eyed, like clueless guy. It's so funny. He does it so well, and so he, despite having like a lot of unfunny jokes or like beating a dead horse with a lot of his bits, he did give me the most laughs of this season, the only laughs of this season. And the episode sets up like a pretty interesting moral dilemma with John Cena has like this portal to like access different universes that his father had, that he had growing up. And he meets a version of the universe where his brother's alive and his dad's alive, which they're not alive in his main universe. And the alternate version of him tries to kill him, and he accidentally kills the alternate version of himself. And that's like a pretty good way to end the episode. He's like, shit, I just killed my alternate universe self who's like a popular superhero and has like a family still. Like, what do I do? And I think it's really great that the multiverse in this, compared to like other superhero properties that feature the multiverse, it's a lot more tame in Peacemaker. Sometimes to the show's detriment, which I'll get into a little later. That brings us to episode 2. And this is where we see that John Economos, who's like the guy in the chair, he's in the last season. He's working for Argus, which is like this intelligence company, kind of like S.H.I.E.L.D. from the MCU. They're spying on Peacemaker. And John Economos is like doing it like begrudgingly because he's friends with Peacemaker. QUC is what it's called, the Quantum Unfolding Chamber, the multiverse thing. Whenever he opens it or like turns it on, they get like a reading of like there's some weird extraterrestrial or there's some freaky shit happening. That's basically what they say. And John Economos is in this van, and he's introduced to a new character this season named Agent Flurry, played by Tim Meadows. And I know Tim Meadows is very beloved. He's on SNL. He's in I Think You Should Leave. He's a very well respected and loved comedian guy. And he's very funny. He gives a good performance. And this is the same thing with Vigilante. A lot of his dialogue isn't funny. A lot of it is very, I don't know. I could not get behind a lot of the writing with this character, like the jokes, especially probably the main joke with him. Flurry has a condition in this, a fictional condition called bird blindness, which is meant to be a joke, but also a real thing that this character has, where it's explained as being like face blindness, but it applies to birds. And as soon as I heard that, I didn't like it back then. And even still, I hate the bird blindness thing. It's not that funny. The joke is like, I can't tell the difference between one type of bird and another. A duck and a pigeon look the same to me. And that's relevant because Peacemaker has a pet eagle called Eagly. And I can't get behind the bird blindness thing. I know they tried to make it like a thing, but like it's too like detached from reality. Like it doesn't make sense. Like if you think about it, it doesn't make that much sense. James Gunn talked about like on the podcast, he was like, he could probably tell a difference between like a hummingbird and an ostrich, but like birds that are like of the same shape, he's not able to tell like the difference in size and volume. Because like with face blindness, it's still like you still see like a face. Like you're not like, oh, you don't have face blindness and you're like, oh, his head looks like 3 times the size. Like you still see like what the size of the person's face. But with this, he can't tell like the size of something. Like if a bird's like a difference, like, like you should be able to like, you could be able to identify like a bird by the how much space it takes up. Like if he's touching it and he's like this, is he not able to tell like how far apart his hands are? And we get introduced to like his crew of like mercenaries that work for Argus that they're using to hunt down Peacemaker. And this is an instance of the kinds of jokes that I don't like in this show, where the conversations, I don't know, maybe this is how James Gunn makes jokes with people in real life, but they always get into these, like, the jokes are like these pedantic like conversations about something that someone says, like a small comment that someone says. Someone's like, oh, maybe he'll come back to get a housewarming gift, and then another person's like, you wouldn't bring this housewarming gift to this place, and then another person's like, a housewarming gift is just any gift that warms the house. And they keep going on and on about this one like insignificant comment someone makes. It's the same if like somebody says like a joke that's like, I can't think of an example, but they'll say something that's like obviously stupid, and like that's, if you just left it there, like that's the joke, like somebody being like confidently wrong about something. But James Gunn will be like, have another character be like, that's not how things work, and then just like completely ruin the joke by pointing out like, oh, it's funny because you're wrong about this thing. I don't like those kinds of jokes, and that there's a lot of that in this. The end of this episode kind of, it has a reunion with all the main cast, the 11th Street Kids, which is what they call their group. So Peacemaker, Amelia Harcourt, John Economos, Vigilante, and Adebayo, who is like Chris's best friend. And we see all of them together. It's nice. I like seeing these characters together. It's building off of the goodwill of the first season, making me care about all these guys. The episode ends with Flurry's crew getting beat up by the eagle sidekick. I have my problems with the Eagly subplot, which I'm going to get into down the line. But then we get to episode 3, and at this point, my ears are starting to hurt, because in this show, there is so much like loud metal music, and like I get that it's like the style of the show, but like every other scene, there's like a And like, I'm like, ow, watching these episodes like one after another, I'm like, ow, my ears. I feel like I'm at like a death metal concert. I need to like wear earplugs while I watch this show. And season 3, episode 3, he goes into the universe, the alternate universe, because he has the alternate universe him's phone, and he sees that in the alternate world, he's dating Amelia Harcourt, which in the normal universe he is in love with, and they allude to this this time that they had on this party boat. Something happened between them. They allude to it, and they're like, "Did it mean something?" He's like, "Did it mean something? What happened on the boat?" And she's like, "No, it didn't. Stop talking about that." But he really likes her, and he sees that he's dating her in this alternate world, and so he goes to the alternate world, and he's like, he goes and he pretends to be his alternate self. He wears alternate self's clothes, and he talks to his brother and his dad, and also Peacemaker makes a joke to his alternate brother, which he's making fun of how he dresses in that universe, and he's like, "Why do my clothes look like the Kardashians' couch?" Which is like, that's why are you saying that? Like, that you're just trying to make it obvious that you're from a different universe. He's supposed to like pretend to be his alternate universe self, so nobody suspects anything. But he's like, "Why do my clothes look like this?" Like, nobody would say that. Like, why do my clothes look so stupid? I'd be like, I don't know. You picked them. What do you mean? Like, why you just saying this now? You wear these clothes every single day. Not a very good job. But he hangs out with alternate universe Harcourt, and this is where I start to get like confused. We're led to believe that Chris is in love with Harcourt, like the main Harcourt. But it doesn't make sense when he's like, I can stay with this Harcourt because she loves me back and stay in this universe. And I'm like, the two versions of Harcourt act completely different from one another. The main one like wears all black. She gets diagnosed with toxic masculinity, which is kind of funny. But she's like super, she's a mess. She's like super pessimistic and like closed off of her emotions. And the alternate universe version is all bubbly. She wears dresses and bright colors. She's like kind of like a more like girly, more feminine kind of girl. And Chris is like, this is great. I love this. I can stay here. And it makes me think like, what did he even like original Harcourt? Because this version acts completely different from her. Is it just like he just likes her face, Because if he really loved her, he would not want to be with this girl who acts completely different from the woman that he loves, just because they look the same. And then we move on to episode 4. Chris retrieves this. He has this little device that he uses to move the quantum unfolding chamber. Like he just puts it in a doorway, and he can move it to different doorways. This is kind of a nitpick, but I think that prop looks very cheap. It kind of took me out seeing them use that prop, because like they open it up and it's like, it's meant to be like metal, but it looks like hollow, like plastic. And they move like these little dials. It looked very cheap to me. And like, there's a scene where Adebayo's like, I think this is how you like later in the season. She's like, I think this is how you open it. And if you look at her hands, she's just like fucking like doing whatever. Like she does not know what she's doing. And the Argus agents, they're at Chris's house and they're trying to hack open the QUC door, while Chris is trying to move it to a different doorway. And John Economos, who works for Argus but is also friends with Peacemaker, so he's trying to throw them off his trail. He's stalling, and I'm like, he doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to help them catch Chris because he's friends with Chris. And the whole time he's like hacking, he's like stalling, being like, did you guys hear something? I think there's something in the drawers or something. And that part makes me think, like, why does he even work for them? Like, what's he doing? Because in the last season, they expose Amanda Waller, who's Adebayo's mom, and like the shady stuff that Argus and Task Force X has been doing. And so they all get like blacklisted from like every CIA intelligence agency. And so that's especially the thing with Amelia Harcourt, because she can't get a job anywhere, and all she knows how to do is like black ops and like spy stuff and killing people. So she can't get a job anywhere. And Economos is, I guess he only has the job so he can, because he knows Chris the most or something. But I'm like, why does he work for these people? Because he's not like a black ops guy. He's like a computer hacker. And I'm sure like you could find a job at like a pretty good like coding job or like accounting job that pays pretty good. You don't have to work for this agency that's like actively trying to capture one of your best friends. I'm like, do they have like blackmail on him? I don't get why he's staying with them if he doesn't want to do anything that they're telling him to do. There's a scene where where Sasha Bordeaux, who's another character who works for Argus in this, another new character, she's like, you got to do this thing, and John's like, no, and she goes, well, then you're fired, and then John's like, okay, I'm in. Like, why are you still staying with them? What do they have over you? You could find a job you could be a part of Geek Squad at Best Buy. In the second half of the episode, this is where we get two really great dialogue scenes. There's one with Rick Flag Sr. and Amelia Harcourt, which Amelia was kind of friends with benefits with Rick Flag Jr. And we see a flashback of her with him right before the Suicide Squad movie, which is where Peacemaker kills Rick Flag Jr. And I like learning that like little wrinkle, which is why like when she meets Peacemaker, she hates him because he killed Rick Flag. And that's something that Peacemaker has since atoned for and like kind of he's felt horrible about. And Amelia has grown really close to Peacemaker since then. Amelia, like, she acts like she doesn't like, she's very snarky and she acts like so combative to everybody else. But with Rick, she's like more open and like kind of, not open, but like she's more polite and like professional with him. And I like seeing like they have like, you can tell like there's a history between the two of them. When that scene begins, Amelia's like calls him like sir, and Rick Flag is like, please call me Rick, like trying to like be like, we have like more of a personal bond because you knew my son or whatever. And he says that many times throughout the scene. He's like, call me Rick. And at first I was like, maybe he's like manipulating her or like, acting like falsely more personal to try and, because he asked Amelia to like set up a meet with Peacemaker so they can capture him. That's like his whole point of going there. So I was like, oh, he's trying to like set up being like close with her so he can ask her to do this thing against her friend Peacemaker. And later in the season, Rick completely like does a 180. However, we see a flashback in the next episode of them at Rick Flag Jr.'s funeral, and Rick Sr. is still like, call me Rick, we're close like that. And this is before he even knows that Peacemaker killed his son. So he has no reason to like try to like manipulate her or like trying to build like some kind of rapport with her, because so I was like, maybe, so he actually is like trying to be like close and friendly and personal with Amelia. So which makes the 180 that he does later in the season like make even less sense. However, that scene like as on its own is really good, the scene between the two of them. After that, we have a really great scene with Chris and Adebayo. Chris is like talking about wanting to stay in the alternate universe and being like, I don't belong in this one. My asshole self belonged to be in this universe where everything went wrong, and I feel like I deserve to be in the universe where the world doesn't hate me. And Adebayo's like, you were put here on purpose for a reason. And in this episode or the last one, we're introduced to a character called Red Saint Wild, who, in light of Eagly, the Eagle sidekick, messing up all those Argus agents, they're like, we brought a professional eagle hunter in to kill the eagle. And he's in there, and he has a subplot with Eagly, and I'm gonna get into it in the next episode. But I'll just say, I did not like the inclusion of this character one bit. Well, I guess I'll get into it now because we're about to get into the episode 5. First of all, the episode starts with Amelia and Peacemaker meeting in like a park. She texts him like, "Meet me at this park," but she texts like a code word that secretly means like, this is a trap, don't show up, because she doesn't want to rat out Peacemaker. But Peacemaker shows up anyways because he wants to ask Amelia once and for all if what they did on the boat meant anything to her, and like if like that her like whether or not her feelings or his feelings about her are reciprocated back towards him. So he shows up to the park anyways, and she's super mad at him for that. So she goes, no, it didn't mean anything. And then the Argus agents ambush him, and the scene is very underwhelming, and I don't like the way it's shot or the way it's edited. The dialogue is super clunky and like a lot of like weird exposition, and I just remember being super like kind of embarrassed when I watched this scene originally. Sasha Bordeaux, who's one of the Argus agents, she's revealed to be a cyborg, like part human, part cyborg. They try and capture, or they do capture Chris, because Amelia's like, or Sasha Bordeaux is about to shoot him, but she's like, it's going to be a fatal shot. So Amelia, to save Chris's life, knocks him down. They bring him to like their holding chamber, and Rick confronts him in like an interrogation room. And that seems pretty. I mean, you just see Rick Flag beat up Peacemaker, and then they're like, we have to put him in the system. Or John and Amelia are like, we have to put him in the system so they don't just kill him or make him disappear. That he's like officially like been arrested. So if something happens to him, you can be like, what happened to him? And so they do that, and then they're like, we have to let Peacemaker out because he's all bloody and bruised and beat up, and we can't just put him into a prison looking like this. People will suspect that he was getting tortured and beat up. So they let Peacemaker out, and then this is when we see the subplot with Red Saint Wild and Eagly. And if I could describe this in one word, it is completely pointless, genuinely a waste of my time. Even watching it now, I still do not understand why this character and this subplot is in here. I think maybe James Gunn just wanted something for the animal sidekick to do. He loves putting little cute animal sidekicks in all of his works, all his movies. You got, Baby Groot's not an animal, but you got Crypto, Eagly, Weasel's kind of like that in the Suicide Squad. Or no, King Shark is kind of like that. He loves cute animals, and so he was like, what if I give the cute animal a side plot in this, so it goes from being cute to being annoying because he's taking up precious screen time. And we see Red Saint Wild. He believes that Eagly is this thing called the Prime Eagle, because in the last episode he's about to shoot Eagly, and John Economos hits him in the back of the head and knocks him out, and Saint Wild is like, what was that? And John Economos just randomly comes up with the excuse like, oh, it was a second eagle that flew up behind you. And Red Saint Wild is like, only the Prime Eagle could summon another eagle. And in the next episode, it's revealed that that's exactly what it is, because Eagly is the Prime Eagle, so he can just summon like 15 other eagles to kill. That's what happens. Eagly summons all these eagles to kill Red Saint Wild, and then he dies. And then that's the end of the subplot. Eagly just shows back up, and Peacemaker's like, where have you been? And I'm like, what a great coincidence that the random excuse that John made about there being two eagles somehow, also is true that Eagly was the Prime Eagle, even though in that moment there wasn't a second eagle when Red Saint Wild got knocked out. And I heard on the Peacemaker podcast, James Gunn talk about it, and he was like, when we were doing Red Saint Wild, we had another actor be the character, and the scenes just weren't working. So I called up my friend Michael Rooker, who plays Yondu in the Guardians of the Galaxy, and we were like, can you play this? Can you we had to reshoot Red Saint Wild scenes, and I'm like, maybe you should have realized, like, while doing that, like the character, like you could have just plucked the character out and the whole plot, and that wouldn't have been. You would have realized that it wasn't necessary. Like, you were like, this is so important. I need to reshoot all these scenes for this thing that goes nowhere. Because the Prime Eagle thing never shows up ever again. And Red Saint Wild is never mentioned ever again. It's literally pointless. Like, dead end right there. Like, that's the end of that whole... That it has no bearing on the rest of the season. And he was like, we had a really tough time with Red Saint Wild. And the same goes for Flurry, Tim Meadows' character. Because James Gunn was like, we tried like hundreds of actors for Flurry, and none of them were working out. And then we just had to ask Tim Meadows, and we were like, hopefully he would say yes to doing it. And he did say yes to doing it. But like in those cases with Red Saint Wild, and I told you that Flurry, a lot of the writing for him I do not like. I'm like, maybe for those characters, it isn't the actors that are the problem. Maybe it's the writing of these characters. Like, maybe you need to tweak that. If you try, like, we tried 1,000 actors, and it's just the way they were performing and the way that they were saying the lines, it just sucked. And I think it's the actor's fault. Like, no, because you see Tim Meadows in this, and he's doing his best. He's a good, funny guy, but still, his lines fall flat. And this episode ends with Peacemaker, after learning that Harcourt, or thinking that Harcourt doesn't like him back, and being like, there's nothing for me on this universe. He closes the door to the quantum unfolding chamber with him inside, and he goes to stay in the alternate universe seemingly forever. At least that's his intention. And I think, you see all the team. Chris leaves a note, and they read it, and you see all the team get sad. Seeing Vigilante cry was very heartbreaking for me, because a lot of the time he's like a goofball. And I remember seeing someone mention it, how it's like kind of like an allegory, or like a parallel to like somebody like taking their own life, because that's basically like kind of what it is, because Peacemaker's like, I'm leaving this universe. And then episode 6, the team, the rest of the gang, the rest of the 11th Street kids decide to go through the quantum unfolding chamber to go find Peacemaker in that alternate universe. And the episode begins, and it's so unfunny when how many are there? 4? When the 4 of them enter the QUC and they're looking around, they're making so many unfunny jokes, and like, and every other. Here's the thing: this show is rated TVMA, so there's like violence, there's swearing, there's nudity, and this show, it bugs me so much in mature rated shows, the overuse of swearing, especially the F word in this. They use that at the beginning of this episode. It's genuinely like every other line where they say fuck, and it's always in places where it doesn't really make sense. I'm like, nobody would put the F word in that spot in the sentence.
What the fuck? I have fucking cocaine all over me.
Fuck, Adrian. Why can't you fucking flush your drugs down the toilet like a normal person?
What the f does that have to do with alligators?
I feel like they're just adding it just to be like, this show is rated TVMA because we're different, and it's so annoying. And there's a lot of that at the beginning of this episode. They open the portal thing, the cheap prop in a doorway that's in Vigilante's, like the basement of Vigilante's mom's house, because he lives with his mom. And we see in the basement Vigilante, he like fights crime, and he's like so against like every criminal. Like he's kind of like the Punisher, but like to like even like more extreme, because like he'll murder like graffiti artists. He's kind of a sociopath. But we see like he has money that he like confiscated from money and drugs that he confiscated from like criminals. He's like, I can't give them to the cops because what if they're corrupt? He's like, I can't use the money either because it's blood money. And he has genuinely like millions of dollars in his basement. And it's meant to be like this joke, like Vigilante has so much money in his basement this whole time. Like what, he just has all this stuff, and you see a scene where the other 3, like they all like, while Vigilante's back is turned, they stuff some stacks of cash inside their pockets or whatever. And yeah, it's a funny bit. I like it. It was a good reveal. However, one of the main conflicts with Amelia Harcourt this season is that since she's blacklisted from every intelligence agency, she's broke. She had to sell her TV. Her utilities are going to get shut off. She's not paying her rent and all that. She needs a job. And I'm like, this reveal that Vigilante has all this cash, it kind of undercuts that entire conflict. Because like the whole time, so this person that she knows just has like 4 lifetimes worth of cash in his basement. So like Amelia Harcourt is like worried about she's not able to pay her stuff or whatever. And like, so it's one of those things where it's like, it's a joke that Vigilante has all this money, but it undercuts one of the major character struggles that one of our characters face. And so I like, is it worth it to have that? So the 4 of them, they enter the alternate universe, and they're searching around alternate Peacemaker's house trying to find Chris. And then Chris's alternate universe brother shows up, and 3 of them hide, and it's just Amelia, and she's like trying to act like her alternate universe self. It's meant to be a joke, like she's so bad at lying. She grabs like the first thing she sees, and she's like, oh, he asked me to get this because I don't know why, it's stupid. And then the brother's like, it was our dead mother's. She gave it to him on his deathbed, on her deathbed. And I'm like, I feel like Amelia should be better at lying because she's like a black ops CIA operative. That she's done that since she was like a child. And so she like, I don't know if she would just pick up the first thing she sees and is like, oh yeah, I just wanted to get that. Like, be like, this is one of those instances where it's like, it's a joke at the expense of like what we know about the character. And then they go on a car ride. And at this point, I'm like, I get it, James Gunn. I get it. I'm talking directly to James Gunn. I get it. You like music. You love music. You know so much about rock bands and metal bands. But I'm like, can we please just tone down? Because everything in this, like, the only thing besides the one big reveal, which I'm going to get into by the end of this episode, the only thing, like the only major differences that we see of this universe compared to our own is related to like rock bands and the names of bands. Like you see in Peacemaker's room, alternate Peacemaker's room, there's posters for popular bands, but they're spelled differently than how they are in the real world. And when he's in the car, or when she's in the car with Chris's alternate brother, the brother's like, "Oh yeah, the Beatles. It's not John Lennon. It's Mick Jagger instead." And there's this band called Halloween, which is super popular here, which it isn't in the real world. And like I mentioned before, there's these needle drops all the time with like heavy metal music playing. And Peacemaker is kind of like, he acts like James Gunn, because I watched on the podcast. James Gunn knows a lot about music. He knows like he knows this band from Germany, this Swedish band. He knows what year things come out. And so he wrote Peacemaker to also be like, "Oh, you ever heard their 1967 album about blah, blah, blah?" And Star-Lord was also kind of like that in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. And at this point, I found it super grating. And also in the finale episode, the thing on the boat happens, and it's also related to like bands. And I'll get into that later. But like, yes, I get it, James Gunn. You love music so much. Tone it down just a little bit. This episode also features maybe the biggest cameo from the DCU, which is Lex Luthor from the Superman movie. We see him in prison, and he makes a deal with Rick Flag Sr. to get switched to a different prison without metahumans, because he hates metahumans so much. In exchange for his help finding the quantum unfolding chamber, because he knows people that know how to do that. And it kind of sets up like Lex Luthor like building up status with Argus to like get some benefit, or maybe get let out or something. And this episode ends with the major plot twist that everyone on the internet saw coming, that everybody was speculating about for years. Not years, but for weeks. It turns out that this universe, where his dad's alive, his brother's alive, he's dating Amelia Harcourt, and everything is perfect. It turns out that in this universe, World War II was won by the Nazis, and the Nazis have essentially taken over the world, or at least the United States, as we see. The 50 stars in the United States flag is replaced with a swastika. At Argus, there's a big mural of Hitler on the wall, which we see in the next episode. And if you look in the background of like the scenes on the alternate universe, there are no people of color. Everything's like all white. And Chris didn't notice because he was so focused on, "Oh, my brother's here. Oh, Amelia Harcourt loves me." And he's also, he's kind of a knucklehead. And I think this reveal it's a fun reveal. I like Adebayo, because Adebayo, she's a black woman. She leaves Chris's house and she just goes on a walk, and you have this really eerie scene where you have all the white like neighbors like looking and being like, "What the hell?" And then Peacemaker's brother pulls up and he starts laying on his horn and being like, "One got out," implied, because they have like, I guess they have all minorities like in detention camps or whatever. And you see like 50 white people just chasing Adebayo down the street, and that's how like the episode ends. However, with this twist, similar to the Money and Vigilantes basement, this twist that the alternate universe is a Nazi Earth completely, I don't want to say ruins the show, but the entire central conflict with Peacemaker completely falls apart with this twist. And I don't mean that lightly, because the conflict with Chris is that he has this universe where he has everything. His family, his girlfriend Harcourt, and he's a superhero. Everybody loves him on this universe. And Chris's conflict with this is choosing between the one where he has it easy and he has everything, or the one with the people that he actually knows and loves, and the way that his life turned out. Does he accept the life that he was given and the life that he has, or does he take the place of the version of him that he killed and like live in the spoils of that universe? With this Nazi reveal, that there's no question of where he's going. The choice is robbed from him, because rightfully so, he does not want to stay in a Nazi universe. And so the moment that reveal happens, and then in the next episode, he's like, instantly he's like, "I'm leaving here," because everybody's a Nazi. Like, complete, because like obviously that washes over the fact that his family, his brother and his dad are alive. The fact that they're all not, and the whole world is run by Nazis. Like, obviously that like trumps everything else. Like, it completely destroys the whole premise of the show and the whole point of doing this multiverse thing. And there's, earlier in the season, Adebayo says something, and like a couple characters like allude, or like they poise the idea, like maybe what you see in that universe isn't real and you're just like imagining it, right? And Chris is like, "Oh no, it's real," and it is real. Like, it's just a different universe. But But I was like, maybe that would be a better reveal, that like this universe is like one where like kind of like the Alan Moore story where Superman has like that alien parasite on him, and so he's like in a trance, but in his mind he's like living like his life on Krypton, where he has a family on Krypton, like everything he could have ever wanted, and he has to choose to say goodbye to it in order to escape like this parasite's control, like something like that, where it's the universe is like all in his brain, like he opens the door and he gets like attached to this thing, and he's stuck in this mind palace where he has everything he could ever want, and he has to actively choose to let it all go. And then the penultimate episode 7, is probably most people's favorite episode, because shit actually happens. Like, it's the most eventful episode, and I like it because Chris actually does stuff in costume for like after like 4 episodes, like an actual like action scenes. And I've mentioned how that's like a pet peeve of mine. That's the same with the Supergirl movie. The fact that they hold out to show you the costume, like they want to make sure you see as little bit of it as possible. I don't know. It especially bothers me with this because season 1 was so good about showing him in costume, like doing stuff. And I get like, I think the premise of this season is like less about Peacemaker and more about Chris, the man under the helmet. It's more psychological. However, season 1 was also a lot about the psychology and inner workings of Chris, and they were still able to put him in the costume. I don't know. It bugs me so much because like it's like the notion that like I want this season's more this is a serious story, and you can't get serious without putting the character in regular clothes. He can't wear a stupid costume. You can't take that seriously. We have to put him in normal clothes. But yeah, that just annoys me. But he's in costume in this one. We never see him wear the helmet except for like a little bit. This episode starts with the follow-up to Adebayo being chased by all the Nazi people. One of the dumbest things happens where she's being chased by like 50 white people through like a neighborhood, and she runs into someone's backyard or like over a fence, and she's like, I'm gonna go in this pool. Like, it's a backyard swimming pool. She goes in the swimming pool, and all 50 of the Nazis follow her into the pool. And it's a normal pool. It has a big four sides, and she goes in the pool. She swims very slowly, and they all follow her in. I'm like, they're not zombies. Why are you following her into the pool? Like, either she goes to the other side of the pool. At that point, go around the pool. You can run to the other side of the pool faster than she can swim to one side. Or just if she stops in the pool, just surround her in a circle and be like, if you get out, we're going to kill you. But she goes in the pool, and all 50 of those guys follow her into the pool. And then Judo Master, who's I haven't mentioned yet, but he was like kind of an antagonistic figure in season 1. And then in this, he works for Argus, and he followed Chris into the portal in one of the other episodes. So he was in the alternate universe. He helps Adebayo out of the pool, and he zaps all the Nazis with telephone wires in the water, so they all get electrocuted and die. Because every single one of them went into the pool. And in this season, they try to like make you like Judo Master a little bit more, because him and Adebayo, they like hide out in this house, and they play board games, and like they get to know each other. And like Judo Master, he's hating on like, oh, Nazis, they took over the world, and like obviously, yeah, Nazis are bad. But in the last season, Judo Master was like on the side of, there was like an alien, like aliens were trying to like control like humans and like control the earth, and Judo Master was like willingly helping them out. So like, why the hell would he? I mean, kind of hypocritical. Like, you're okay with aliens taking over the whole entire the earth, and now you're like grandstanding over like Nazis. Like, it didn't track for me. And then they get Sidney Happerstein, who's in Superman. He's like one of Lex Luthor's like lackeys. They bring him in because they're like, he's the only guy that can work this device to help to find the QUC. And then Sidney Happerstein shows up. He presses 2 buttons and he's like, I found it. I could have done that. And then they find the QUC, and they're gonna go to what is it? Vigilante's house? This is where it is still. And after Peacemaker and Amelia, real Amelia, escape from the alternate universe Argus after finding out that it's run by Nazis, they drive together on his motorcycle, his peace cycle. Alternate universe him has a motorcycle that's like branded with his superhero gimmick. They drive. It's like a nice scene where it's like she has her arms wrapped around him as he drives the motorcycle. And then they get like surrounded by cops, and then alternate universe Peacemaker's dad and brother show up because they're also superheroes. His dad's the Blue Dragon, and his brother is, what the fuck's his name? Captain Terrific? No, Captain Triumph. That's his name. They kill all the police officers, and they take Peacemaker and Amelia because they're like, we know you're from a different universe, because they captured John Economos, and then they bring them back to the alternate universe house, Peacemaker house. Peacemaker's brother says something about like exposing like they have the portal, and then Peacemaker's dad is like, if you reveal that we have the quantum unfolding chamber, that'll ruin everything that we have, because it's like, I guess it's like an illegal like technology. And he doesn't want to be like a fugitive or whatever. But I'm like, you guys just killed like 20 cops. You don't think that would like ruin like your public image if that got out? That you guys, like, they were bad, like they were probably also Nazis, but in the world run by Nazis, if you kill the Nazi cops, the main public is not gonna like you. And then that happens, and Chris reveals that, like, you know, alternate universe me tried to kill me, and I accidentally killed him, and that makes his alternate universe brother start to hate Chris. He's like fuming, but their alternate universe dad, as opposed to the normal universe dad, who's in the real world, Chris's dad is a Nazi, and he's like a horrible dad, a horrible guy. But in this universe, he's actually not a Nazi, and he's like more level-headed and like nice and normal. And Amelia's like, oh, I'm surprised you're real nice for a Nazi. And then Augie, that's the dad's name, he's like, I'm not a Nazi, you know, I'm just one guy, even though the whole world is run by Nazis, you know, I can't fight every injustice. And he gives us like this really, it's a nice speech. And then Vigilante from outside, he comes in, smashes through the window, and kills Peacemaker's alternate dad right in front of him, right after he gives the speech about how he's not evil. And Chris, he's like, I don't think he was a Nazi, and they're pulling him away to try and get him back to the normal universe. And the way Peacemaker, John Cena is really great in this season. He gives a great performance. There's so many great emotional scenes with him. One of the best parts of the show, the way he's like, he delivers the lines of like, I don't think he was a Nazi. He wasn't a Nazi. Like the desperation and like him like real, like right after he realizes like this is like a good version of his dad, and he just died right in front of him. Like it's so great. They're all about to leave, and then right as Chris is running to the door, Captain Triumph smashes through the wall and tackles Chris and starts beating him up, and then all the main characters, they all gang up on him and start beating him up, and Eagly's there like pecking at his face, and Chris has this like traumatic like reaction to it because it's like the second time he's seeing his brother die or get killed, and he lets out like this shriek that's like so like not guttural but like kind of desperate and almost like childlike, and he's like, get off of him, and he has this very emotional moment where he's like, he says, there's nothing wrong with your universe or mine, it's me, I'm the problem, I'm cursed, I'm horrible. And it's very sad for him to like come to that conclusion, especially because he's wrong. There definitely is something wrong with the alternate universe. It's run by Nazis. Also, while they're in the alternate universe, Vigilante meets his alternate self, and it's funny how like they're basically just the same person, except the alternate universe Vigilante hates Peacemaker because he's against all the Nazis. And so there's just two Vigilantes during like the back half of the episode, and it's funny seeing them, just the two of them go around. And I thought that would lead to like some kind of like maybe the wrong Vigilante goes into the real world, or maybe both Vigilantes go into the real world and there's just like two Vigilantes from now on. I thought there would be some kind of ramifications to there being two of them, but I guess not. And then after that jam-packed episode, we get to the finale of the show. And this is one of the most underwhelming finales I've ever seen. What happens at the end of the last one, they give the little portal device to Argus, and John Cena's like, or Peacemaker's like, they came and they convinced me to give this to you, so they're good, you should promote them. And Judo Master, he like goes back with Argus, but he still like corroborates their story because he's like still nice. And and then they arrest Peacemaker and they give all the team jobs at Argus. I guess except for Vigilante and Adebayo. But now Amelia and John, they still work at Argus, and they have the little portal thing. And Rick Flag Sr. works with Lex Luthor's crew to like explore different universes, and like they're trying to find something, like some other universe for some reason. And there's this montage of them exploring the different doors in the QUC, and there's a song playing that's so. Not only is it like a rock song, but the lyrics are so vulgar. There's no problem with that, but I found it so cringe. It's a song, like it totally takes me out of the scene because the song is like, the lyrics are so like childish, and it's like overly like so explicit for like no good reason. And then as this montage goes on, we see like Rick Flag Sr. like getting in more with the Lex Luthor's crew, and he's like gone like completely different than how he was like in Superman or at the beginning of this season, where he's like he was always against Peacemaker, but he wasn't like on the side of like let's lock up all metahumans or and find like a way to get rid of them. But now he's like basically just become like Lex Luthor too. We get a flashback between Chris and Amelia. We see what happens on the party boat that they've been alluding to this whole time. And I wanted to hate this scene. I was primed to because I was already annoyed by how on the party boat they see this band performing called Nelson. And I was like, even the episode is like named after them. And I'm like, I get it, James Gunn, you like music. But the scene happens, and Chris and Amelia, they're like dancing, and they go in for a kiss. And it's like, the song is actually nice, and the scene is like beautifully shot. And it's a really great scene. It kind of gave me goosebumps a little bit. But I think so that boat kiss scene is pretty good. We see what happened. They kissed each other. They're in love. And Peacemaker's been like, did you actually love me, or were we just both drunk? We get a scene where Chris is like leaving town because he's like, I'm cursed. I gotta get away from everyone. But then the whole gang comes to like console him and be like, all the bad things you've done is usually because someone forced you to do it and you weren't listening to like your intuition. And then finally, once and for all, he asks Amelia, did the kiss mean something? And she's like, yes, it meant everything. And he's like, yes, dude, she actually likes me. And that's good and all. And then we see, well, before that, we see Sasha Bordeaux and Amelia Harcourt. They meet because Rick Flag, they finally find like this place in the QUC that's like breathable air and like isn't going to kill you instantly as soon as you open the door. And Rick Flag like shows like the government, like this is a place to prison all metahumans because you just get them away from this planet and they can't hurt anybody on the planet. And Sasha Bordeaux is like, I can't work for Argus anymore because he's gonna imprison all metahumans on this planet. And then Amelia's like, I have someone you should meet. And we see Sasha and Adebayo meet up, and it's meant to be like this whoa kind of moment, but it's like I don't know. I didn't really get the goosebumps like I guess the show wanted me to. And this scene of Sasha and Adebayo meeting, as well as like other characters becoming disillusioned with Argus and wanting to not have to listen to people anymore. It leads them to, they convince Vigilante to use the money that he has from criminals, and they buy an office and they decorate the office, and they're all smiling and laughing, and they walk out of this building, and the camera pans up and it's like, checkmate, making the world a better place, which is like, it's a thing from like, checkmate's like a thing from the comics. And it turns out that they made their own fucking spy agency or like intelligence business or something. You see them like all walk out. They're all like smiling and like laughing. It's all sunny. It looks like it's like a college like pamphlet where it's like, look at how diverse our campuses are. And that's supposed to be like the culmination of like all their arcs and like all their conflicts leading up to this. Like we have our own business now where we do intelligence stuff. And the whole time throughout the season, Adebayo has like her own solo thing where she's like, I'm a spy. You can hire me to be a spy. Which I don't even remember seeing. Like, is she even good at being a spy? Like, she helped save the world from aliens in the last season, but I don't remember her doing anything spy-like. Like, she shot someone or tasered someone. Like, she doesn't, especially in this season, she doesn't do anything spy-worthy. And so it's the 11th Street Kids. There's Peacemaker, Amelia, John, Vigilante, and Adebayo. Also, Judo Master joins them. Flurry joins them because he doesn't like his crew being killed. And then Sasha Bordeaux she also joins them. And I guess I'm meant to be like, oh, that's so cool. They got these 3 new guys, and I love this whole team. But I don't like these 3 new people. These characters, they didn't give me a reason to like them. Like Flurry is like a womanizing like pervert. Sasha was evil up until the point she found out that Rick Flag was gonna imprison all metahumans, and she's like, I'm a metahuman. Does that mean I'm gonna get imprisoned? That's the only reason that she turns on Flag. The moment like it turns back towards her, she's like, "Oh, actually, I don't support this. I'm gonna leave." Like that was the only time where she ever was like up until that point, she was flirting with Rick Flag. She was sleeping with him, and then Judo Master. Like I said, the thing about he was on the side of aliens controlling all the humans and taking over the world. I don't like any of these characters, and I wasn't given any reason to like them. And I get all the main 5, they all have like kind of their own problems. A lot of them are murderers and like Vigilante's like a sociopath. But like they grow on you that you were given reasons to sympathize with them. But these characters, you got like one scene with Flurry being like, you did something good back when they booked Chris so Flag didn't kill him. And also the thing with Flurry is that after the scene where you see the checkmate building, there's one final scene at the end where Peacemaker gets kidnapped and Rick Flag traps him in that dimension that they found, like the prison for metahumans. They trap him in there, and he's just isolated, and he's by himself. And that's like a cliffhanger to end the season. 2 of the people that helped kidnap Peacemaker, they were part of Flurry's crew at the beginning of the season. And part of the reason why Flurry defected from Argus was that his crew kept dying because of the QUC stuff that they were doing. And so I was like, oh, Flurry has like empathy for these people. He doesn't just want these guys that he works with to just get killed for no good reason. But when those people seemingly are just, they'll just blindly follow Rick Flag and Argus, and they're bad guys. I'm like, Flurry has sympathy for these guys, but these guys are like horrible people. So like that's the reason that he like defects against Argus, even though the people that he was sympathizing with wouldn't defect against Argus, so they still work for Argus. I don't know. It was weird. But yeah, Peacemaker gets kidnapped, and it's completely undermines the happy ending of the show. Originally, I think it was just going to end with the checkmate building, but then they were like, you have to add this little thing at the end. And apparently this dimension that Peacemaker's trapped in it's called Salvation, which is another thing from the comics. It's meant to be like important to the DCU going in the future. But yeah, then the season just ends there, and it was so underwhelming. Nothing really happens, and I'm not going to be like, there was no action in this. That's why I disliked it, or there was no costumed action in this, even though that's something that I would say. It's not even that. That's not that part. That's not why I'm underwhelmed. The reason why I'm underwhelmed is because the whole Rick Flag's whole subplot, the whole thing about him wanting to find Peacemaker and find the QUC to get this prison for metahumans, the whole season that's been going on, it leads the only thing that it builds towards is like a lead up to something else in the future. Like I just waited the whole season seeing Rick Flag do stuff just to be like left with a cliffhanger of like what, like because there's no second confrontation with Rick Flag like with John Cena Peacemaker, where Peacemaker like, I don't know, like either it was like, I was given orders by Amanda Waller to kill your son, or like fully like reconcile or apologize to Rick or something like that. There's no other kind of confrontation between that. The only time we see Rick after the part where he announces like the metahuman prison is him putting Peacemaker away. He's like, bye Peacemaker. I'm thinking about like, what if in the Superman movie we see Lex Luthor like orchestrating his big master plan, and we only see him enact it right at the end of the movie. Like the movie ends with him like releasing like the Superman's parents' video being like, he's actually here to take over the world. And that's how the movie ends, after spending like 2 hours watching Lex like find the Fortress of Solitude and take it to like translators and speech people. I don't know. It's so, and I don't know when they'll continue this series. I know James Gunn said on the podcast that we'll see Peacemaker again, but I don't think there's going to be a season 3 of Peacemaker. I think it's going to be like in some other, maybe some like some new show, or like Creature Commandos or something. And like I was expecting some kind of confrontation with like Flag or Argus, Like something to do with like I had the idea like maybe the QUC, like something happens with the QUC and Peacemaker's like the only one that could save them, and he saves like maybe he saves Age instead of hated his guts the whole time, because the dilemma that Peacemaker was faced with at the beginning of the season was not feeling like he was a hero, feeling like he was this horrible person. So to have him do something heroic to people that like hate him or wouldn't do the same for him will be a way to like prove to himself and others that he is a hero. But there's nothing like that. The only thing that happens is the speech that Adebayo gives him about, you know, you're a good friend, and I can tell that you love people. And I don't know. It's so, and I saw the James Gunn on the Peacemaker podcast talking about that scene with Adebayo, and he was brought to tears because his dad was like that, and his dad passed away a few years ago, I think, and so I could tell that this show and these characters like mean a lot to him, and so much, and like a lot of them are like his friends. I mean, one of the characters is played by his wife, so he has like this very personal connection to these characters, and he said that Peacemaker is like his favorite thing to write, probably because he has like a lot of creative control because it's not like a known character like Superman, and so much throughout the podcast, he's like, this is like one of my favorite things I've shot. This scene is one of the best scenes that I've ever done. He says that a lot, and I feel like I almost feel like he's like too close to this, where when he writes things, he feels like it has like infinitely more weight than it actually does, because he has like a personal connection to the people playing them, the characters, too personal to him that he feels like just putting it in is like enough to get people to be like, wow, instead of like he has like a pre established connection to what he's writing, but the audience doesn't. I'm not like looking at the character and being like, that's my wife, so that when she's doing an emotional scene, I'm like, that's my wife, so now it's more personal and more emotional to me. I don't know. That's how I feel when after watching the podcast and seeing how James Gunn talks about it. But yeah, that's the end of the Peacemaker season 2. A lot of my thoughts have not changed since I watched it originally. I still feel like, I said on the Supergirl episode, like after watching Peacemaker season 2, my excitement for the DCU plummeted like a good amount, down to like a 60% out of when it was at like 100%. And I still feel that way now. After watching Supergirl, I mean, I said at the end of that episode, the movie, I had a lot of problems with the movie. But the way it ended, I guess it feels more purposeful with the way it ended, because at least maybe it's because I know when I'm going to see Supergirl again, because she's in the Superman sequel. So I'm like, oh, it looks like this is an intentional through line from this movie to the next movie. But with this, it's like, I mean, I remember like even the Checkmate review, I was like not excited to see like, oh, I can't wait to see them in their bougie office doing, I don't even know what they would be doing. Like I thought they were going to start like their own like discount like Avengers team, where they're like, we have Judo Master and Vigilante and Peacemaker, and maybe Amelia Harcourt is also like a superhero. So I'm not super excited about the DCU. I see like the news all the time of like James Gunn is making a Gorilla Grodd show and a Mr. Terrific show. I don't know. I was super excited for the DCU like a year ago, before I watched the show, and now I'm getting more and more unsure with each passing project that comes out. However, that's just me personally. I mean, there are some people that are like, don't give a fuck about Avengers Doomsday, and I'm super pumped for that movie. That's all I have to say about this episode. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'm actually curious about, I read a lot of discussions about the season when the show was coming out, but I'm curious what people think about it 1 year later. Thank you all for listening to this episode, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.